All right, it is Monday on Daily Delivery. Michael Rand here, Patrick Reusse with me as always. Patrick, it's become a fall tradition that we talk about a narrow Vikings escape on Monday mornings. This week, no exception. So we'll get to that Vikings game in a minute here. Their win over the Jets, 10-2 now. Get to some Gopher volleyball, get to a little bit of Wild and Wolves, maybe a little bit of other stuff sprinkled in along the way. But Patrick, I think a couple things from right off the jump that stood out to me in that 27-22 win over the Jets. Number one, Ed Donatell's defense, the ultimate test of bend but don't break. But Patrick, they have the closing time defense that Mike Zimmer always wished he had, at least last year. They at least have made the plays when it matters the most. And I guess the other piece of it is, can they just 1 week just make it easy on themselves? Because that was the week. They were up 17-3, had the ball to maybe go for, to make it 24-3 before the end of the half. And we're getting the kickoff at the start of the second half. And then it still comes down to the very end.
Well, the New York Jets yesterday had 486 yards against Ed's defense.
That's a lot.
Vikings did not get to 300. And I would leave that as I turned that game off. I said, okay, Tom Kelly's great theory was there are four outcomes. You beat them, they beat you, they beat themselves, you beat yourselves.
Yes.
That was they beat themselves game for the Jets. They turned it over 5 times with the non-entity quarterback. And even though he also, as Mark Craig pointed out this morning, and I was reading him in the print edition before we started doing this, he was the expert. He had the 2022 Cousins thing going, throwing under the chains on third down, right?
Yes.
He would take that, he would go back and take that little dump off and complete it with no chance to get the first down unless they missed 2 tackles. And so that was, the numbers look good, but he was terrible. And he also missed a guy open down there on third down in the end zone and then Bynum comes up with the interception. But, you try to figure out how the Vikings will win, and they don't turn it over, and the Jets turn it over 5 times. So that had a lot to do with it, obviously. This was, to me, the most surprising performance of all their victories because they weren't good. They were bad defensively, and Cousins was as bad as he can be. Now the Jets defense is pretty good, but still, yet I don't think when the Jets were driving down there at the end and had a chance to win it,
right?
I didn't think they were going to.
I didn't either.
I thought they were going to screw it up, and they did. And the Vikings, they get a little stout down in there, as you just pointed out. They seem to make the plays at the end. So, how can you complain about 10-2? You can't. And they're still ahead of the Cowboys, right? They're still a game ahead of the Cowboys.
Well, and the Cowboys are in the same division as the Eagles, so it doesn't really matter too much there. So they're, no matter what, it looks like they would be.
You could have home field against the Cowboys. You're right.
Because they'd be the division winner instead of a wild card. But yeah, it's amazing.
Second round, though, you get the Cowboys up here. I don't know about that one.
No, I think that's the thing. If you look far ahead to matchups, like none of them look particularly appealing, although I think the 49ers might be in a little trouble now with Garoppolo now out for the season too. But
out for the season. Okay.
Yeah, they said that. They said that after the game yesterday. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing. The other piece of it, like when the Jets got down to the 1, and we're maybe going to go for the go ahead score, and it was first and goal at the 1, right? And then it was part of it was that the Jets had been bad in the red zone all day, but part of it was that the Vikings have earned enough of that equity where you're like, they might still stop them here. Like, what other year have you ever had that feeling about the Vikings that they're probably still going to pull this one out? Like it's a rare feeling when you watch this team.
Yeah, it is. It is. But boy, that would have been a game that you were even though, as you pointed out, they didn't do the optimum there at the end of the first half. You had no doubts that this was going to be an easy afternoon, and then all of a sudden the Jets were just
Right.
going up and down the field, and it was really weird. But I don't know. Now they got to go on the road, and the mighty Lions, who put up
Right.
40 again, put up 40, wasn't it 40 something again yesterday? They're scoring like crazy. That's going to be interesting. Now, here's the thing, though. You go in there and you say, "Oh man, the Lions are going to be ready. They're going to be all fired up," but they're still the Lions. Let's face it.
Yes.
Still, they'll still figure out. But geez, 10-2, and it's. I think we'd gotten over the complaining about the quality of the victories until
Right.
yesterday. Now we're
Yes.
back. Now we're back doing it again because you just look at the yardage and say, "What? 486 yards?" It's saying, okay, they've given up 400 all these times, but it's
Right.
like 403, 404. It's not dang near 500, which is what it was yesterday against the Jets, not known for its potent offense. So it
Oh yeah.
was
They
it
out
was
get
weird, but
they outgained 486 to 287.
yes, right. That was a Bud victory, man. We talked about Bud's wins,
Yeah.
but now Bud's defense never gave up 486. But yeah, I can find you a few games where Bud's team didn't make 200 and the other team made 350, and
Yes.
he figured them out. There's one game there, the John Brockington game, where I think the Vikings had less than 100 yards in total offense and won the game 3-0 or something. But yeah, it was. I don't know, 10-2. How can you complain? You just wonder. You just wonder if the karma's with you all year long,
Right.
or you have to pay for this in the end. If you have to like play some team like the Commanders that you expect to beat in the first round of the playoffs, and
Right.
you're the one that turned it over four times or something. Yeah, who knows what it's going to lead to? But it is a tremendously interesting season, that's for sure, to say the least. And Jefferson gets held down. They did a good job with
Right.
Jefferson a couple of plays. So I mean, when you take away the Vikings' best player, the quarterback has a terrible game. The defense doesn't stop them very often. I mean, they stop them down in the red zone, but they don't stop them the rest of the time. And you still win. Yeah, what's to complain about, huh?
Yeah. And you mentioned taking away Jefferson. Yeah, they did. I mean, that's the kind of team that's going to give the Vikings some problems, right? It's the team that can get pressure with four, that's got two good physical corners. And, both those Jets corners are pretty good. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those weird games, like you said, where the stats don't add up unless you look at the really critical ones. You mentioned 5 turnovers, and I think we're counting the fourth down stops in that because they stopped him 3 times on fourth down. They got 2 interceptions, so
Yeah.
that's the five, and the Vikings didn't turn it over at all. So the Jets were 3 for 16 on third
Yeah.
down, 2 for 5 on fourth down. But yeah, the Vikings, turned it over. Didn't turn it over. They averaged 4.3 yards per pass play. Like they
Wow.
just, yeah, and I just, Cousins took some shots in that game too. He came up wincing in one one of those times where he took a pretty big hit. So it was one of those games where they didn't they kind of had that lull, that mid game lull that they always go through. And you're right. I think the big question that people have had since they started doing this is when will it catch up to them, right? Like when does it catch up to them?
And I guess it
Because
did in the Dallas game. They got beat 40-3. That
oh,
was all their
right,
bad stuff on. That was all their bad stuff on display. But you know, uh, I is still like their first team. Okay, they
yeah,
got a lot of good players. They got a lot of good players on their first team, even defensively. But and they have pretty well avoided most injuries. So as long as they can stay healthy, they'll stay competitive. And but dang, it's that was the weirdest one of all time yesterday. They just you know as it's just not a team you expect to go up and down the field like the Jets did, and you just don't you expect them to go three and out more than occurred yesterday. That's for sure.
Take a playcation to Mystic Lake. With 24/7 gaming, the good times never have to end. And you can satisfy your cravings at our restaurants and bars. Or relax in one of our luxurious hotel rooms. Those that play together, stay together. And don't forget to join Club M so you can spark new memories and bask in the rewards along the way. Follow the lights to Mystic Lake, where every day is play day.
Well, I think the most troubling thing about the defense right now is that they're not getting much of a pass rush. They didn't get anything in the second half. Not getting much from Zadarius Smith right now, not getting much from Danielle Hunter right now. And thought that Tomlinson might help coming back, and he got a couple of hurries in the game. But they made White uncomfortable, I think, when they were building that lead. But he had a lot of clean pockets to work with as the game went on, and that was a big piece of why they were able to come back. So yeah, you got that piece of it. Well, I can say one guy though that's playing about as well as I can remember him playing is Harrison Smith. I was wondering before the year started. I mean, this is year 11 for him. I think he was a rookie in 2012, so this is probably year 11 for him. I was kind of wondering, hey, is this the guy? Early 30s? Is this a guy who's going to hit a cliff at some point? But he's had 5 interceptions now this year. He's every big play he's in the frame. So that's one of the big reasons that they've been able to make some of these big plays at the end.
Yeah, he will be remembered as quite the noble Viking. That is for sure. He's as you say, he's already got 11 years in here, and hard nosed guy, makes plays, comes up with another interception, and he's a really good player, and he's been banged up a little bit in the previous seasons, and didn't he miss what was it last year? He missed a bunch a couple of years ago.
Yeah, he's missed a little bit somewhere in there. I can't remember what it was, but
he's been a great Viking. There's no doubt about it. There hasn't been that much glory in that, the 2009. I mean, he wasn't there for 9, but I mean, you go to the NFC title game a few years ago, but beyond that, there hasn't been that much glory. But he's been a hell of a player. There's no doubt about it.
And they swept the AFC East. That was some one way or another. I mean, they got all those wins. The Miami game gets a little bit of a asterisk is the wrong word, but they didn't have to play against Tua. So I mean, I think at this point in the season we kind of know who they are, right? Where they're a team that is kind of living on the edge, and the biggest worry you've got is that runs out, and that against probably statistically, in terms of margins, in terms of everything else, in terms of overall strength, statistically, perhaps the 2 best teams in the NFC, they lost to by a combined score of 64-10. So
I think though, one of the bottom lines here is if you got to figure out if the team you're playing has a chance to stop Jefferson.
Right.
If Jefferson's going to go 10 and 160 with 2 touchdowns, they can beat anybody. So do you have the Jets had the weapons to, as you said, the pass rush and good corners to kind of take him away from Cousins on a sloppy day for Cousins. But, okay, the Lions are, you say, they go to Detroit, blah, blah, blah. Is Detroit going to keep him from catching 9 or 10 passes? That's he's the best player in the league. And when they make full use of him, they're pretty dang good offensively. What they make yesterday, they couldn't make full. That's one reason that game was so close.
Yeah.
Jefferson didn't break it open for him like he has other games. Not break it open, but win it for him. So can a team stop Jefferson or not? And by that, I mean, 5 catches for 90 yards or something instead of having him absolutely take over the game like he's done so often in the last month.
Yeah. And he, I think the one thing they got to figure out too is that if the team can take him away, and this is easier said than done, but how do they make, what's the secondary plan? Because I don't feel like they've had a lot of answers this year for, they've won games when he's been shut down, but they haven't been explosive in other ways. They haven't had a huge running game, or haven't gotten, Thielen or Hawkinson into, the really big game territory, or figure the screen game has just been terrible this year. I feel like every time they throw a screen, it's like a 2-yard loss. So something, I feel like unless someone's just shutting Jefferson down with one player, which is pretty rare, something else should be open, and they haven't really figured that out, what that is yet.
The one thing is one thing in all of this. What went wrong? They still put the drive together when they had to. They've been amazing at that in the fourth quarter. That when they really had to have a drive, they pretty much turned unstoppable, and they did that again. Cousins came out of his coma and played well in that drive, and they pulled her out again. So
they're going to be away from home for a little while, but when they're at home, maybe they should have the scoreboard operator just put fourth quarter up on the scoreboard for the whole game, and maybe they can play like that the whole game.
Well, the first half looked like, okay, this isn't one of they had control of the game, and still they did. NFL, the dream of the NFL. Every game, last 2 minutes, you don't know who's going to win. That's the secret of success, because there's a lot of bad football and bad officiating and stuff that drives you crazy. But as long as you don't know who's going to win with 2 minutes to go, the NFL is going to remain the most popular league we've ever had, right?
Yes. And, before we move on, one thing you did say earlier, the Tom Kellyism of the 4 ways to win. The Vikings this year have very seldom beaten themselves, right? I mean, they'll drive you crazy with some of their some of the lulls that they've had, but they don't commit a lot of penalties. They generally don't turn the ball over. They do the things that, those kind of intangible categories where you're like, yeah, it's not really interesting or not really exciting. Those are the things that, you don't beat yourself. You're gonna win half your game sometimes if you just don't beat yourself.
And as you pointed out, the 2 games that they lost, they got beat. They had nothing to do with. They had nothing. Their own problems as far as letting something get away from them and handing the game to the other team wasn't a problem in either of those losses. They got their heads handed to them. So that's you're right. They have not beaten themselves all year.
No, and with the cushion they have right now in the division, where they're just 1 win or 1 Detroit loss away from clinching, they had to go into a deep bunker pretty soon and figure out how to beat some of these better teams instead of worrying too much about anything else.
Well, as you point out, though, the 49ers don't have a quarterback now, so Dallas and Philadelphia are the only 2 teams that should be able to beat them.
Yeah.
In my, they're the only teams that have better players than the Vikings do. Right?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And you're going to be playing at home until you have to go to Philadelphia or maybe Dallas. If the Vikings get beat Sunday, then all of a sudden Dallas has the tiebreaker and they're the 2 seed, right? So I don't know. I haven't looked at Dallas' schedule, but does anybody do they? Them and the Eagles must have 1 left, don't they? Here,
they play each other once. But yeah, I mean the Vikings would be the 2 seed no matter what, because.
Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting that. That's right.
Yeah, they just do it with the division winners.
They're in the same division. That's right.
Yeah, they're in the same division. So Dallas is probably
somebody in the West is. We're gonna have another Seattle being at home at 8 and 9, type of thing going on.
Yes. And then they'll.
San Francisco goes in the tank here.
So the Vikings. I mean, the way it looks is if it holds, the Vikings would play the lowest wild card, which could be Washington, could be the Giants, could be someone like that in the opener. So
I'd like to play the Giants.
Yeah, that's the one that feels doable.
They're not good. They're not good at all.
No,
I don't.
No, but
anyway,
we'll see where they wind up.
10-2. How many times? When's the last time they were 10-2?
I feel like 2017. I think they were 10-2 at one point, but I can't remember for sure.
13-3 year, or they?
Yeah, they were 13-3 that year. I feel like they were at least in that neighborhood that year. But yeah, before that, I think he had to go back to the Favre year, right? The 2009
Remember,
season.
We all loved Zim when he was 13-3.
We did.
Bashing him now.
It was kind of funny too, because they had this was last week, but they had O'Connell mic'd up segment. I think it was the Vikings put it out where it was him mic'd up during the Thanksgiving game against New England, and just to call the all the positive energy, all the stuff he's, the rah-rah stuff. And so I was like, God, I wonder if they ever did a mic'd up with Zimmer. And they did. It was it was the first one I found. It was the NFL one that they produced. I found it on YouTube. It was the 2015 season when they played the Rams, and it was that really contentious game that went overtime, and Teddy got smacked in the head by somebody. And Zimmer had some of the rah-rah stuff going, but some of it was just him yelling at officials and just getting mad. And it was such a stark contrast, even though that was a win in an 11-5 season for them. So it was just kind of funny.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's different personalities, but the kid's going to be coach of the year, I would think.
He's up there for sure. He's done quite a job, because this is, like we've talked about, this is a lot of the same players that went.
I don't think I would have given him any game. I might have given Bynum and Harrison Smith each a game ball, but after that game yesterday, I said, "Nah, none of you guys get a game ball for this mess. We're going to do it next time. I'm not giving 25 away for this game."
So. No, just run away with that win and get on to the next one. We got to talk about. Let's hit a bunch of other teams here. The Wild had a similar escape yesterday. They were up 5-1 right against Dallas, and then
going into the third period, right?
I didn't see what happened, but man, that's a hard.
Gave up, I think, the last one with 3 minutes to go. Then they go into the shootout, and all three of their shooters scored in the shootout.
Amazing.
So it must have been a bad goalie day for both teams. But yeah, well, they've now got a 4-game winning streak and scoring a lot of goals after going they had about 2 weeks where they couldn't score more than one.
Yeah, they had like a stretch of I think 6 games with 8 goals total or something like that.
I was at a youth hockey game yesterday, and later in the afternoon after the Viking game, and I was talking to a guy who's been a hockey guy for about 30 years, and he said Kaprizov is the best player I've ever seen.
Wow.
And he didn't mean it. He didn't mean a while. He meant ever. He thinks he's, with his combination of strength and basically what he's able to do, surrounded by the guys he's got. Sam Smith or somebody I never heard of.
Sam Steele, yeah.
Whatever the hell his name is his first line center. He couldn't make the Edmonton lineup, and he's the first line center here, and yet the guy goes and he's McDavid's scoring like crazy, but he is an MVP candidate.
Yes.
No doubt it.
He's amazing.
He is, and he doesn't have this team isn't nearly as good as they were last year, I don't think. Now Boldy could become like that second scorer they need, but without Fiala and with the guy, the center he has playing with him, I mean, it's amazing what he's doing, and they get in one of these shootouts, he's something. He's great. Good thing they got him out of Russia. Don't go home again, son.
Yeah, stay here.
Until the war's over and Putin's out of power.
Stay here.
Stay here. Don't be going back home again, buddy.
No, and they won in a shootout the other night too, and he scored in that shootout as well. It's just his hands are amazing. I watched that shootout. I didn't see much of the game, but I saw that it was going into overtime, so I flipped it on quick. Saw that they had tied it up late. I think it was Anaheim. I don't think they played a great game, but they snuck that one out. And I think they were the first part of the shootout. They missed. I can't remember who. I think Zuccarello went first and was nowhere near. And then the Anaheim player scored. So it's Kaprizov, and they're down 1-0 in the shootout. He just comes gliding down, flips it to his forehand, and just goes top shelf right over the goalie's blocker. It's goalie didn't even see it. He had no chance to react. His hands. For someone, you're right, with someone with that kind of strength on the puck, to have also those hands and that skating ability. I mean, certainly the best Wild player I've ever seen, but it's not hyperbole to say he's one of the most exciting players I've ever seen play, at least.
Oh yeah, he's great, and he's got an idiotic agent too. He ended up taking way less money than he should have gotten here. He should have hung in there a little longer. Although the NHL rules make it really hard to become a free agent. So anyway, they could have renewed him at low number or some damn thing. So, but they got him. Guerin got him cheap. He got Eck cheap. He did a pretty good job. They're still trying to get out from under Parisi and Tudor, but he got the real important players signed at pretty good number. Yeah, I was wondering about and it's still, it's still early. What are we, a quarter of the way, a little over a quarter of the way through the season? I was wondering 2 weeks ago if they were going to be a playoff team, but they'll be in there. You'll probably go into the last 2 weeks jockeying for position, but just because of him, they're gonna at least be a playoff team.
Yeah.
And wouldn't it be something if they made it through the first round for the first
May.
time in a long,
First time
long
in like 7 or 8 years, right? It was back in the mid 2000s that Yossi got him there a couple times. But yeah, it's a
People keep showing up, though, man. I was saying, look at the crowds; it's always high 17. So it's
yeah.
keep showing up.
I wrote the other day about when both the Wild and the Wolves were 11-11, at least in my calculations, because
Yes.
the shootout wins bother me in the NHL still, that they still categorize those differently, even though the shootout losses are different. But they both had 11 wins through 22 games, and I was like, okay, where do you think these teams are headed the rest of the way? And I was more optimistic at that point about the Wild, and I certainly am now. That game against the Thunder was a mess. I know they're without Towns, but Gobert
act like adults for
tripping a guy.
Yeah.
Like intentionally, and then cowering after he did it and getting ejected. He earned that ejection. That was fair. I mean, they were complaining about the refs the whole game, and some of the stuff was.
Well, they got 5 technicals, right?
Yeah, they were complaining.
Was that the game they got all the yeah? They
yes,
got 5 technicals.
And the ref was bad, but whatever. Like you got a chance to beat Oklahoma City on your home court. Like grow up. Like put forth a mature performance. That for a long time I thought it was just Towns that was driving that, but he's out and they're still doing it, and it's troubling.
Noel, I never is he Noel? How do we pronounce
Noel? Jalen Noel.
Noel.
Yeah.
Okay. He even acted like an idiot in that game too. But I like him a lot offensively, but I see no hope here. It's look at it. The Lakers are now playing. The Lakers are going to make the playoffs. Okay, the Lakers are going to be in the top 10. Who are these guys going to finish ahead of?
I know.
They're not good. They and whatever magic Finch had going last year, he certainly doesn't have it with this outfit. They're just behaving like children, and you got Russell as one of your leaders, and he got 2 T's and got thrown out, and they should start fining their own players about complaining about the officials.
Yes.
It's you grow up, on God's sakes. Gobert, hey Mike, this is a disaster of all time.
It can be, yeah.
If they make the top 10, what if that turns out to be like the 7th overall pick
right?
that they gave up? I mean, what the heck? What is this? It's wow, just I mean, they made you're paying $8 million for the smartest general manager there is, and he might have been here a week and committed the biggest disaster in franchise history.
I know. I
was there now, and he's not nearly as good a player as you thought he was.
I was wondering that the other day. Like, what if they hadn't hired Connolly? Would they still have made that trade? I mean, I don't know if Rosas was still here. Rosas liked to swing for the fences, so maybe you could convince yourself that Rosas would make a trade like that if he was still here. But there's no way Gupta would have made that trade if he was still running the show, right?
No, not. You were part of it was getting rid of Beasley and Beverly and some of those pains, but I mean, oh man, alive. How do they get out from under this? I mean, everybody talks about the Mike Lind trade for Herschel as the comparable, but that was, he brought in 3 guys from the whatever league that was, the USFL, and it was, you still had they had a pretty good nucleus of players, and it's also a game where you got 30 people involved, right? You got 30 players. Right. So, there's other places to get players. Here you only got 5 guys out there, and you're not getting any good new ones for 5 years. I mean, it's I don't know. And then you got, I think also that your card to get out of this, Mike.
Yeah.
Which might have been trading Cat in
Yeah.
February. Now
Yes.
that's gone. You can't do. Of course, you couldn't trade him till next summer anyway. So maybe if he comes back and plays great, but I keep forgetting that you can't trade him at the deadline this year because of the deal or
Because of the
something.
contract. Yeah.
But you couldn't trade him anyway. But it's a very. I thought by getting rid of that Pat Bev who watched him, he was just doing idiotic things all the time. Gave him some defense, but uh, would make them more mature, but it's made them less. They're just not a they're just not a they're not adults. And Cat, and it I guess Cat, as you said, is not the whole problem. They got a lot of other guys who
Yeah.
aren't adults. Gobert is not the personality that or the player that I was expecting they were getting. So
No, not so far. And you're right. I mean, I think the get out of jail free card the whole time has been that if this didn't go well this year, that it was going to be that they would have to trade Cat. And well, that'll be an interesting offseason question, because if you prove enough this year that this pairing just isn't working, that is the natural next move. And then you're just taking the franchise in a totally different direction, and you're recouping some draft picks and probably getting a good player back in the salary match and things like that. But yeah, that's kind of the nuclear option. We'll see if it comes to that. And
plus, Mike, when you watch them without Cat, you say, okay, where are they going to get their points from?
I know that's the problem.
You watch him and you say, okay, I can't stand the guy. He drives me crazy, complaining and everything. But yeah, what are where are you going to get your points now that he's not there? He's your best shooter for one thing. So
yeah. Well, you mentioned Pat Bev. I mean, for all of the stuff he did last year, the thing he did really well, aside from just pure energy, was they don't have anybody on the perimeter now that can just lock a guy down or stop the ball. Right. Their perimeter defense is so bad now. They're trying to make this rookie Wendell Moore Jr. be kind of that guy, and he's done fine, but he was like a surprise starter. Like, he's not going to do that every game, and that's not something you can count on. And McDaniels is pretty good in that, but he's not always going to guard on the ball, and you can't expect him to do that every possession either, because you're going to get burned another way.
He's not a very mature guy either. Playing it. I mean, he's young and he plays. He's got a little pouting and not involved.
Yeah,
pure. He's not consistent either. So they're not a very. You know how we talked a lot this year about the last couple months, how the Twins were just not likable because this team there's nothing likable about this team.
No, and it's in such contrast to last year, because last year's team was very likable, and people keep drawing comparisons to last year's team because they started slow too. I think they were 11-15 at one point. They were in the midst of like a 5-game losing streak at this point in the season. So yeah, but you know what? This year's team wasn't supposed to do that. This year's team was supposed to be, better from the start. Even if we thought it was going to take a little while for them to get chemistry, we thought they would look good, at least at this part, that they weren't going to start 11-15 because they had figured something out last year. And whatever it is, it's just not there right now. You're right. They're not likable day in and day out. I thought the Memphis game was encouraging to a certain degree because they did seem like they played with a little bit more cohesion on defense, and then they give up 135 to the Thunder the next game. It's like they can't follow up one good performance with another one.
And when they played the Thunder early in the year, you were saying, oh, thank God they get to play the Thunder. Now the Thunder, a month later, 6 weeks later, runs through them, and we're not surprised. So,
I watched that game, and I was like, the Thunder looked like the better team. They just flat out
and
did.
They got about 12 draft choices coming up, too, to get better, Anyway, okay.
Yeah.
Let's drop those mutts.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk quick.
Nice win for the Whalens. They got assisted a little, but it's they basically, this kid from Penn State, Marisa or something, was a really good shooter. I watched quite a bit of the game actually, and she makes it. I think it was one of their other players makes a jump shot with like 2 seconds to go to put them ahead at the end of regulation, and they throw the ball into the kid from Roseau. And she's 75 feet away from the basket with less than a second to go. And some idiot from Penn State runs her over.
Wow.
And she gets to go to the line and make 2 free throws. And but the Gophers turned it over 26 times or something like that and still won the game. They shot 32 free throws and Penn State shot 14. But hey, it's a win because it looks like they look like they lost the game 2 or 3 times. Sophie Hart, remember her from Farmington?
Yeah.
Big kid, 6'5". She went to NC State. She wasn't playing much. She's in the transfer portal. We need Sophie. They need some size on that team. Their rebounding is awful. So get maybe Sophie can transfer up here. I don't think she could play till next year, but maybe they can go get Sophie. And because she was, I don't know what was going on down there, but Gophers wanted her bad. And the men's team,
Yikes.
well, they were never in that game at Purdue, and
Purdue's just got the size that it's just if you don't.
The 7'4" guy.
Yeah, what do you have, like 30 and 20? I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, everybody. I was one of the guys on TV the other day. I was watching a game, and he says he was not a Big Ten Network guy. It was another guy saying Purdue's the best team in the country. They got the big guy who's unstoppable, and then they got 4 smaller guys running all around him, just basically staying out of his way and making shots and taking advantage of his giant size. And actually it could have been worse. They lost by I don't know what they lost by what 15, 6, whatever it was.
It was 19 maybe something like that. 89, 70.
So
I think
they did cover then because they had but Purdue had to be 15-point favorites in that game. I look at you see Northwestern beating Michigan State.
Yeah.
You see Nebraska beating Illinois. Nebraska beat somebody, Illinois or something. They were 4-16 last year. They might have to fight to get to 4-16.
Yeah. Who are they better than right now? I don't know. Like you feel like they should be a little bit better this year with Dawson Garcia and Battle and some of the younger guys, but it's a work in progress. That's our good line right now.
Gopher basketball, no interest.
Yeah,
no interest. The people don't go to the games. They're charging too much money. It's too hard to work to get there, and it's basically it's been falling off for. It's not Ben Johnson's fault, obviously.
No,
but it's just been falling off. There was a little interest when Tubby was, had that when Tubby first came, and then he had one good year, and then they fired him, and Patino had the one good year. But there's really, how many times has that building been full in the last 15 years? About 5, maybe. I mean, people don't care anymore. Gopher basketball we talked about Gopher hockey crowds going down, but I think there's interest now in Gopher hockey. There is no interest in Gopher men's basketball, none, and it's a long, deep hole they got to dig out of over there.
No, Gopher hockey does provide at least the glimpse of hope that, when a team wins, they'll get the fans back, but it's an easier path back for Gopher hockey when you can recruit the way they do. Gopher basketball, they're always at a deficit.
Every time I mention this, though, people talk about the prices. One thing about us, we get passes if we want to go. We don't have to have somebody come up and you walk up there with your 2 kids and they want $80 to get in to see a hockey game. 40 for you and 20 for the kids or something like that. It's, they're outrageous because of that scholarship fund that they charge season ticket holders. They prorated all their regular tickets at the same rates because they don't want some guy saying I paid $20 next to a guy who paid 50. But the prices are outrageous, and you don't have the guys out on the street with tickets anymore because it's all on the app, right? So so it's that's part of the problem. You should be able to take your 2 12-year-old kids over there and get 3 seats for $40, but they don't. They want 40 apiece, for God's sakes. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, you're right. They've if not outright priced people out, they've turned them away with the sticker shock, right? Like some people might look at it and say, yeah, we could do that, but is that the value that we want out of an event? And you got a lot of other things you can do.
And one last thing.
Yeah.
Pinstripe Bowl.
Baby, here we go.
If you're going to go to a third-rate bowl game, it might as well be in New York City on December 27th. Fly out Christmas night. You can still see the Christmas decorations. You can go down to the ice will still be in there. The Rockefeller Center. It's fantastic. Go spend eat a very expensive meal the night beforehand. Go to the game, fly out after the game. It'll be it's early in the morning, right? Isn't it like it's an early game? I think noon or 1
Something
or
like
something.
that, yeah.
On a Tuesday, what could be better? You fly out Christmas night, you spend Monday in the city, and you go to the Gopher game, and you don't give a damn if they win or lose, and then you come home. Who cares?
Look at that. What a sales pitch you got.
Right.
Mark, it's the Mark Coyle Bowl. He should be hiring you
It
for
is.
to drum up all the interest here.
Yeah. Dino Babbers against PJ Fleck. He hired both of them. So before he left Syracuse, he hired Dino. So
yeah.
Anyway.
All right, Patrick. Well, I'm just glad that you weren't too broken up over the USA loss in the World Cup to still be able to do this.
Yeah. Gee, that was such a glorious run. 3 goals and 1 win in 4 games or matches, and they talk like it was this. I said this on Twitter. Reading these soccer stories filed by the people covering it, like this grandeur, the competitiveness, and the fighting for the glory. What a bunch of crap! It's just a game. They're playing. They're out there diving, trying to hope somebody gives them a penalty kick so they can decide the game that way. And they scored 3 goals in 4 games. Come on. Don't tell me how great it was and what a great run it was. You beat Iran. That was your one win. You can't beat Iran in soccer, for God's sakes. Come on. Don't tell me how great it was. Now they got a young team.
Yes.
It's here 4 years from now. So, and they're expanding the field to 48 teams, right, to make sure that the U.S. is in it, so we don't get knocked out in the CONCACAF playoffs. So we'll be in. Maybe
it'll be fun. That'll be fun.
What's that? What? It wasn't worth filling this arena, filling the stadium in February, and having 3 Honduras have feet cut off because they froze to death to go over there and score 3 goals in 4 games and win 1 game. Yeah. You'll never convince me. So everybody's saying, it's terrible. We're not. It's like being bad in cricket. Who cares? Who cares? It's like cricket, for goodness sakes. Go back where you came from, soccer. That's what I say. Goodbye.
I knew I could get you going at the end. Thanks, Patrick.
Okay, goodbye. See you.